Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!
Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. And now, Duke Durango.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. I'm here with my good friend, wrestling fan extraordinaire, one of the best guys I've ever met in this business, my very, very good friend, Dwayne Soper. Dwayne, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Jordan. I don't know if I'll live up to those words, but I'm going to try.
Oh, come on, man. You're one of the people that obviously everybody that I think that I came up with knows your name. And I don't know anybody that I came up with, be it, a lot of what I'll call the longtime fans that you see at every single show, or anybody in the locker room would have a negative thing to say about you and or your family that have given us nothing but amazing support over the last, coming up now. For me, I've known you 20 years. I think somewhere between 2003, 2005, I don't remember exactly, but yeah, I remember opening my Hotmail one time when I still had a Hotmail. And it was, basically it was a one, if I remember, I could be full of shit, but it was like a one-word email, like, hey, how are you? You need a website,
I believe.
And then you built me this website and we've been friends ever since.
Yeah, that's memories. It was about 2003, roughly around that time.
Yeah, like I can honestly remember where I was sitting when I opened the email. It was one of the more flattering things where somebody had actually, because nobody had ever reached out to me like that before. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Like I can remember telling my wife, like, holy shit, some guy just reached out to me. He's gonna build me a website, blah blah blah. I was all excited.
You probably what a perv this guy is, eh?
No way, man. It was awesome. And it, and how many, let's not BS, how many other websites did you build?
Had one for TJ. Kim and I did a couple. Kim did Natty's. Then we did one just for Bulldog Memories, Stampede Bulldogs.
Okay, yeah.
We did that one. There's a couple over time. I also worked on Bad News's.
Okay.
Not a lot of people knew about that one, but I worked on his and was helping him with his book for a while.
Really? Hey?
So yeah, I dribbled a little bit. I'm not a computer extraordinaire, but I put in my passion into it. So.
Well, and you're, to say the least, one of the most passionate wrestling fans I know. I bet I can tell your story, but I want to hear it anyways, just because it's always very interesting to me how people got into wrestling and how a love of something that probably started at a very young age is still going today,
Well, of course, back in Newfoundland, I think it was mid to late 70s. I went to my first show with my dad, Superstars of Wrestling.
Right.
That's when we had guys like George the Animal Steel was there, Louis Martinez. Big guy was Sailor White. He was He was the provincial villain. But then we had a lot of guys just come in and out from the Detroit and Toronto area. They would come in. A lot of TV would be coming in from Montreal and stuff.
Okay.
But I got hooked on that, watching it Saturday nights. I used to sneak down Saturday nights to my uncles who lived across the street, great uncle, and I used to watch with him, and that was kind of cool. Then we headed out west, ended up in BC for a little bit. Started watching Tomko's wrestling, All-Star Wrestling.
Yeah, you bet. I remember that. 79,
80 roughly, somewhere around that verge.
Okay.
Then hit Alberta, and then the rest is history because Stampede became a passion like every young boy in Alberta. It was just rite of passage, so to speak.
Well, and I talk to people about Stampede Wrestling and they think I know a lot about Stampede Wrestling. And then I talk to guys like you and think I don't know anything about Stampede Wrestling.
Well, it's you when you follow it from day one when you got here, every TV show. I used to actually sit down and take out the binder with the paper and write down, okay, dream match here, dream match there. Try to do a little bit of booking.
Fantasy booking.
Fantasy booking, and okay, who can I bring in against Stomper? Who can I bring in? So then, as time went on, you just started watching, and then you became more involved in the actual story of it instead of just what they were doing in the ring. And then you paid more attention. Like, okay, now this makes sense. Hey, that's something that I saw on another show that Now I see why they're doing it. So from that point on, it became more of a almost like a study. Like I was in school myself. I'm sitting there watching every match, seeing how it built, and that's where my passion grew. It was not the flamboyancy of it and holy crap, look at that move. It was more like this is like a day-to-day story for me and almost like history. And I followed it from that point on, and it really became, like I said, a real passion.
Right. And you're also people that know you would know, but people that don't know, you're also a real aficionado of Japanese wrestling.
Yeah, I have quite a good share.
Well, I mean, it's really, like I say, it's always really impressive to me because I don't like as much wrestling as I've seen. I don't remember. Do you know what I mean? Like the names who I've watched, where they were wrestling doesn't stick. But man, talking to guys like you and TJ, you can tell like where it was, what was happening, what the program was worked like. That match you posted the other day, the Stan Hansen.
Kawashi.
Yeah. I've seen Stan Hansen works a lot of matches, but I kind of forgot, like either I haven't seen it or I forgot Stan Hansen could throw an insecurity.
Yeah, he is. That's who actually got me hooked on Japanese wrestling, because I used to watch his tapes from down in Georgia, and like all of a sudden I had a buddy send me a tape. He used to trade my Stampede tapes for NWA tapes. And he goes, well, you should check out this one, because Hansen was an instant favorite. Ivan Koloff and Hansen were two of my favorites back there.
Right.
And he goes, check out this stuff. And I go, well, Japan, I don't know if I really want to, first of all, language barrier. I don't know if I'll probably fall asleep. He goes, no, if you like Hansen, you'll like this. So then I started watching Hansen and Brody over in Japan. And then I was and it just went on from there. And then the Stampede connection hit. And I was like, holy crap, there's Stampede boys over here. What's Kerry Brown doing wrestling over here?
Right.
So it was like, then on from there, and then all of a sudden, there's Hiro Hossie, Jushin Liger. Those are guys that, started out here. And it was like, crap. And Tenzan. And it was like from there on. So speaking of TJ, you get me, TJ, and Harry together, and it's like embarrassing sometimes. It's like boom, boom, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it was like, this is nuts how we just sit here. Next thing you know, it's 4 hours going by.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like, it's so impressive to me that you guys not only know, all the moves and all the spots and all that stuff, even though you're not a wrestler, you probably know as much of this stuff as anybody. And then the history so richly. It's I give you guys nothing but respect. It's actually unbelievable to me.
Respect is the key word. That's I watched those guys had such a tradition over in Japan. Like it wasn't like they have it on a whole different level, right? With respect from the fans and the boys in the back, they have to have their respect. You don't just come walking to Japan and you think you're going to be to the top of the card. It's you work your way up there, and the guys in North America that go over there, they get a harder time from what TJ, Harry, Davey. You hear stories from those guys when they were over there. It wasn't all easy for them. They had to work on it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, wrestling's a business where nothing's given. You know what I mean? Like, there might be some people in the world that had a name that would get them in the door, but you can't stay there without being good. You can't, and it's a tough business. So, anybody that can hang in there and do it for any reasonable amount of time and have any reasonable amount of success gets nothing. I give them nothing but respect, because it's a tough business.
It's funny you say that, because you throw that name value in there. About a week and a half ago on Twitter, there was some guy, Yahoo, I call him. He was mouthing off saying that Owen Hart wouldn't have made it if it didn't have his name. And I'm thinking, he goes, like, what did he do in Japan? And I'm thinking, man, the guy went to Japan and he became a legend in New Japan. My favorite era of Owen is 87, 89, when he's going back and forth from Stampede to Japan. He was phenomenal there. And his ability had nothing to do with his name over there, because he was in there with some really great talent, right? And he proved that he was worthy when he won the junior championship.
Sorry, buddy. My cat's bugging me here. And correct me if I'm wrong, was he not the first guy, Jin, to win that title?
Yeah,
right.
He was.
What did he do? He broke, and I don't mean this to sound I don't want to put too big of a crown on this, but he broke a color barrier, so to speak, right?
Exactly.
What did he do? Just that.
I don't usually go on a tangent no more, because I know guys try to sucker you in on the internet, and I learned my lesson years ago on that. But it was like, man, give your head a shake. Like, WWF stuff aside, Owen could live on what he did just in Stampede and Japan and Mexico. Like
Yeah,
he made himself a legend right there.
for sure. Well, and that's the thing is people don't look subjectively at things. They put they don't put their personal feelings aside. It's one thing to say, I don't like this particular wrestler. I don't like the way this particular wrestler wrestles. Maybe you don't like what you hear about him for whatever reason, but you have to be able to subjectively put that aside and just look at a body of work and say, okay, if I, just because I don't like somebody doesn't mean they weren't amazing at what they did. Right. And for Owen to be the level of success he was, that doesn't just happen. Like, that's not an accident.
No, by far. No, he worked at it. And like I said, going over to Japan, he didn't have it, I'm sure. They didn't say, oh, that's Stu's son. Let's just give him a break. I bet you they tortured the crap out of him, right? It's just like they did Benoit and so on, right? Those guys proved over there what they could handle.
Well, and I mean, it was kind of the same when we were in the dungeon, right? If you came rolling into the dungeon, we let you know what the dungeon was about when we were there. And I'm sure every training school is somewhat the same way. It's not that you're bullying guys, but it's kind of like, if you're going to get in here and roll with us, this is how the business works.
Yeah, it's and I heard stories about you guys and the dungeon itself, like almost like every era of the dungeon, you guys have different stories. Like everybody heard about the Pillman one based on the last little bit of shows out there and such. And I'm sure prior to that, they didn't make it easy on the big football players are coming in, like Stu punished them just to see what they were made of, right?
100%.
Sure you guys tortured a few of these young kids.
Well, and you know what, man? There was a time when I looked at some guys that were coming up after us and kind of thought, when I looked at the Johnny Divines, and there was a guy called Vince Salemi that was really good. And, Kerwin was particular, fun to work with. And, Ivan and Chance Beckett. And then we had like Pollock and Dean, Crazy Dean and Eddie Mustang. And we had some really, really hard guys in there. And I remember looking at some of these guys thinking these guys wouldn't have made it through the dungeon when I was at the dungeon. You know what I mean? They would have left just because of the intensity of the workouts, not because we were going to bully them out of there. But then I kind of talking about what you're talking about, like what I've got through Pillman's dungeon and what I've got through Stu's dungeon. You know what I mean? Like, because each dungeon got a little bit less grindy,
Yeah. Politically correct is the best way to put it now, because the bullying, locker room bullying and all that, times have changed. It's in every business, hockey, everywhere, right?
Yeah, and not for the worst. Like, I don't want to make that sound like that's a bad thing at all. There's sometimes I would like to, I don't know if there's a way to weed some guys out of the business that maybe take it for granted what they do, because it's, just because they can doesn't necessarily mean they should.
Yeah.
But that's strictly a matter of opinion, So let's talk a little bit about Stan Hansen. I know he's if he's not your favorite, he's the top. I'm going to guess top three.
Top three, yep, for sure.
Who are your top three? Let's talk about that.
Koloff, Brody, and Hansen.
Is that right?
And I hold Stampede in a different era. Like, I have my favorites everywhere else.
Yeah.
Because of course, I more than likely cheered the bad guys.
Right.
So, Bad News, Gamma, those type of guys were Cuban Assassin. Those were my favorites. Yeah, I respected what the Hearts did and everything, and but it wasn't my favorite. I liked what the bad guys did. So, and but yeah, they're held in a different regards. But top three would be Hansen, Brody, and Koloff, and they're wide
in that order.
Pretty much, yeah, I would say.
Pretty much, hey. Anybody could argue that if they wanted to. I don't think there's a reason to. Again, that comes down to subjectivity or objectivity. It's what you like to see. I think at that point, Brody. To be totally honest, Brody's somebody I haven't seen a huge body of Brody's work. I've seen probably 10 of Brody's matches, sort of thing. So I have a feel for Brody, but to say I know what Brody's work was like and say would be absolute horseshit. But he was hard as fuck,
Yeah, but he has his aura. It changes from year to year. He's like, sometimes he's the internet darling, sometimes he's not.
Right.
Sometimes you get one of the old school boys to get out there and they'll rag on him and then say he was hard to work with. And then you got another guy that goes on and says, oh, he was great to work with and he was looking out for all the boys and he wouldn't let the promoter push him around. And
Right.
so he gets, but you don't hear that about Hansen. Hansen was like, other than he was blind as a bat
Right.
and stiff. But other than that, you don't hear nobody say nothing bad about Hansen, right? Everybody liked working with him, and those
Yeah.
two guys were good friends.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important what you do outside the ring does count. I don't know if people, sometimes people don't recognize that, where a guy might be hard to do business with. Like, do I respect Shawn Michaels' body of work? 100%. But I don't necessarily respect how he handled himself in a lot of his business dealings. He was hard to do business with, quite frankly.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm the same boat. If you put Sean on there for me, I'll turn the channel. It depends. That's honestly. And more right now, I'll throw this name out there, Kenny Omega. He's like, everybody loves Kenny, and yeah, he can work good. But I'll be honest with you, I don't watch his stuff. I'm just not interested in him. I've seen his stuff in Japan, and yeah, he can work. But just something about the guy that's like, yeah, no, I don't want to watch him.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I throw him up there, and some of the guys that know me very well, they'll laugh when I say this. He's like my Greg Gagne. I cannot stand Greg Gagne. There's just something about him that irks the crap out of me. And there's a couple other guys out there, but I've got a respect for them. I won't. But Greg Gagne, he's probably, as funny as it sounds, he's probably on my most hated list. And he never did nothing that, but I just don't like the guy. He's like, I don't know, just like, it's just like that. But right now, it's probably Omega. It's the same way for me. And a lot of people are like, what the hell is wrong with you? Omega's like putting on some of the best matches going right now.
Yeah, he's tearing some houses down, Dwayne.
Yeah, that's not my style. I'd rather watch. I don't know. Nothing wrong with AEW. I just started watching some of it. I gave myself a month to start watching it because I never watched it from the start. And there's some really good talent in there.
Oh, 100%.
And I understand why guys like the Bucks and everything are over and everybody loves them. But it's like you said earlier, there's a different style of wrestling for every single person. And 100%. They're not my style.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Like, I think the Bucks do some shit I could never have dreamt of doing on my best, my best day and my most athletic day. Those guys are unbelievable at what they do. But the thing for me, when it's just constant big move after big move after big move after big move, with no selling in between, I appreciate the pace of it. Do you know what I mean? But I don't appreciate the no selling of it. That part kind of that hurts my feelings a little bit.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean there. It's who would you say right now is out of AEW and WWE, the best seller? Not working the best matches, but in your word of selling, throw something.
That's a good question, man. That's a really good question. The best seller. I don't know. Nobody really sells. That's
the problem, right? That's why I threw it out there because I can't name it either. And I didn't want to be like cocky about it, but I can't honestly name.
You know what? I'll say Seth Rollins does sell his balls off.
Yeah,
Seth Rollins sells his balls off. Yeah, I'll give him that.
Well, other than that, I don't know. There's not a lot. Usually it's the young kids that are selling now because they're getting the crap kicked out of them.
Yeah.
So they either they're selling it to sell it, or they're really getting the crap kicked out of them. So one way or the other, something's working there.
Yeah, they're either selling their ass off, or it's really easy to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's okay for the business to change. As an old man, you have to kind of, wrestling's changed from when I was a kid for sure. But wrestling was different. Wrestling changed in the, 2 decades I was involved in it, literally almost from one style of wrestling to another, right? Where guys that when I broke in, Jack Evans, Ted Hart, come on, Jordan, MRB, those type of guys, they were getting mad heat from the office for the matches they were putting on. They were putting on crazy matches. They were doing insane shit, but the office just felt it was too much. It was just too much at one time. But now you look at where the business is, and that's just the where it's gone.
There, yeah. Our time is in the past. And I saw that from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Right.
Everything gradually changed. Like it went from big fat brawlers in the 70s, and then then it went to more comical in the 80s, where characters.
Yeah, your job was your gimmick.
Yeah, and then in the 90s was more athleticism. Like just look at All Japan. Like those guys literally hounded each other in the 90s. And then 2000s, kind of you started to see everything come in, and I've tried to adjust to it. And there's been a lot of guys that you named MRB. TJ was one of my not because I know him, but he was one of my favorite wrestlers of the modern era. Like he was just a thrill to watch in the ring. First day I saw him.
Well, the thing about TJ is he can wrestle any style you want to.
Yeah.
Right. You want to put on a good brawl, his punches, kicks, stomps, all that stuff looks good enough to really sustain a good brawl. You want to wrestle lucha, he can flip with you. You want to wrestle technical, he'll go hold for hold with you. Like the kid can literally do anything you want him to do in a wrestling ring. It's unbelievable to me. Same with Harry.
Yep. No, Harry's got the size too, which is he was a beast, and I'm going to be interested to see. Like I'm hoping to see him back on TV soon. I know he's back there, but I haven't seen him back on yet. So we'll see what they do with him, and he's capable of anything there, right? So.
Well, I used to ask him his business. I'd ask him what's going on, but now that I have a podcast, I don't want to ask him because I don't want him to think I'm going to come on here and talk about it.
He's keeping himself in the shadows a little more than he used to.
Yeah, definitely. He keeps his cards pretty close to the vest these days.
Yeah, I don't blame him. To be honest, you don't want something to get blown out of proportion. And wrong word said.
Thing is, man, with the internet, and it's the old, telephone, telegram, tell a wrestler. Like if you need stuff to get out, just tell another wrestler, and it will burn up the internet within, probably an afternoon, something like that. Like it's, And
don't trust. It's hard to trust anybody nowadays, even though you can say this guy's a good friend. And it's like, oh, how can I put myself over? I'll put him down, right?
Or how could I get clicks? I'll talk about my friend because he talked to me as a friend and told me something that was going on in his life, and I'm going to go put that on the internet for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I've seen that. Just back in the glory days of the message boards, wrestlers would come on there, and then it would just blow up. Like they'd just say one little thing, and the next thing you know, like they're having battles about who's stealing whose moves. And I'm like, seriously, you're battling about who's stealing a move? Like it was some fun times back then watching you guys create havoc with one another.
Well, and that's one thing I don't think I really did is engage too much in those kind of internet havoc on that Alberta wrestling message board and stuff like that. Like I was wrestling for quite a while before that I knew that even existed. Like I remember I was going to pick Ruffy and the Highlander up to go on the road somewhere. And they were chirping me about Trent Walters making me, number one on his top 5 list of wrestlers in Alberta. And I'm like, what are you guys even talking about? And they're like, oh, it's on the Alberta Pro Wrestling message board. I'm like, I don't even know what that is, man. I had no idea wrestling existed on the internet. I thought it was just porn.
Yeah, well, it is porn for some people.
So. Now I know it's wrestling and porn.
Yeah. No, those were interesting days because I know some of the boys used to have ulterior identities just to ruffle a few feathers. And
I bet.
Yeah, and where I was a moderator, I used to see the email addresses, and I'd be like, "What the hell are you doing now, guys?" And I'm not going to show you, but a couple of them.
Oh, I know exactly who. We won't mention any names because I don't want to blow any covers. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, they had some fun with some people.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I bet they still do it today. That's what makes it awesome.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they get a kick out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard some within the last few years. Like,
well, that's how I actually met a couple of them. They were pulling a few things on me.
Oh, is that right?
Remember MSN Messenger and things like that? All of a sudden, I'd be on the computer and something would pop up, and they're like, "Soper, I need you to come work for me in New York. I'm starting a promotion." And I'm sure you've seen some of those emails that have went out. And
no, the ones I used to get were. Because Bruce gave me the name Dirty Dick Reigns, which was, I want to say a wrestler in Winnipeg in like the 50s. So I would get these random messages like, why are you using our grandfather's wrestling name? Like, you're not even related to us.
Awesome. Yeah, the name is out there. I've actually seen it in results. It is crazy. The dirty Nick Raines name. I've seen that out in some of the results from, some of those historical sites on this day in history.
Is that right, eh?
And then I got to take a second look. I'm like, well, no, different year altogether.
Yeah. Do you talk to Sonny McDermott much?
Off and on, he pops up on Twitter every now and then. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy knows some shit about wrestling too.
Yeah, he's actually, it's funny you say about guys who know wrestling. Talked to Roy yesterday. We actually we did a podcast with like an audio podcast.
Okay.
With, I think it's Canadian wrestling history. And,
I know. I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so he invited me and Roy on to talk Stampede.
Right.
So he wanted Roy's view of Calgary, my view of Medicine Hat, and that was it was a fun time. And it was like me and Roy were talking afterwards, and we were talking, we need to do a podcast. We need to do one. We're doing a round table. Right. We have a bunch of guys in like one area, all sitting around talking, and then it can give you a big variety, because a lot of us have stories. Like you guys have stories, the fans have stories, and even that Stampede era, like when you guys came up in PWA, that was a special era in its own. Like it, as a fan sitting back and watching it,
right?
Like just you guys as a group of wrestlers, there was some awesome talent there, and just watching the camaraderie of you guys, like outside the ring, and I was me and Kim were one of the few people that got to go out with you guys afterwards, and it was nice to be included and just see a different look of how you guys all were and how hard you guys worked, because you guys were from Tabor, the Medicine Hat, the Calgary, the Black Diamond. It was all over the place, and we did a lot of road shows chasing you guys around like that.
Oh yeah, man.
But it was fun, right? And you guys were like a little family.
There was no politicking. I remember looking back on it, and when you hear about some of the stuff you hear about in wrestling, especially at the top levels, you hear about guys politicking for spots on rosters or finishes and things like that. And I don't remember anybody ever really doing that. I mean, I can kind of remember hearing some guys, not wanting to drop a belt here or there, for whatever reason. I remember one guy having to wrestle me in his hometown and not being happy that he had to put me over. And I somewhat see that, you know what I mean? But at the same time, there was nobody ever politicking. It was the office would pick the top, whoever was at the top of the roster. There was nobody, kissing ass to get a spot higher up on the roster at that time.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's funny, I still keep in touch with a lot of the guys from that era, or I see them, like even Juggernaut. I run into him. He's here in Medicine Hat. He works, he's got a nice cushy job for the city of Medicine Hat.
Nice.
And every now and then he'll drive by and blow the horn, give me the finger. But the other times he'll take me out to breakfast. So he takes me out to breakfast every once in a while. So and then I keep in touch with yourself, and social media does a lot of the things, and then you sit back and like that was a special era. It was kind of cool. Even the fans, you still every now and then I'll go to an independent show in Calgary, and be like, oh, that looks familiar. That's a familiar face. And then someone will go like this, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I used to see him back in the mid 2000s at the Stampede shows. And the same core group of fans are still going to the shows in Calgary, which I find neat.
Yeah. Well, there's one guy, I just became friends with him on Facebook, actually. His name's Don. Last name escapes me right now. And I can remember him coming to the shows with his daughter, and she was like a little kid. You know what I mean? She was like 6, 7 years old. And I can remember, packing it in wrestling, and she's like 17, 18, like not at every single show, but you'd see them consistently at the shows. You know what I mean? It's just like, we literally watched that kid grow up in the crowd.
Yeah, that's kind of neat to see that, right? And I see the faces of some of the guys. So every now and then, like we have a promotion that comes to town, CWE, and they come to town, and every now and then they'll bring through, Marky will come down from Edmonton and work for them, or at least one of the other guys, and they'll be like, holy crap, look at the boys, how big they've grown. Because I used to remember they used to be like tiny little guys, and then they'd see St. John and Owen and be like looking up to them now, because the boys taller over me. And the rest of them, like,
they're men now.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool to see that reaction that they watched them grow up, and now they see them, they're like, holy crap. So
Yeah.
it's neat that way, and that I don't think they'll ever lose that joy. That's one of the parts I like about independent wrestling.
Right.
It's, just that little interaction you have, and family. It's family is what it is.
Well, the thing is, we can make a connection with people like you guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's when we're in the same town so consistently, so close, and again, a guy like you that is so nice to the boys, does so much to put the boys over. Like, you probably did more to promote my career than I ever did. Right. Like, you made a MySpace for me when MySpace was a thing.
MySpace.
Did a website for me. Like, I never did any of that stuff. And then I remember, just as I was getting ready to retire, I remember you tell her, I was taking some time off. And I remember you telling me, like, you need a Facebook. And I'm like, I don't need a Facebook.
Yeah. Time, you had to keep up with the times.
Yeah. Like, I can remember, like, what the hell is Facebook? No, man, I got MySpace. I'm good.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah. Didn't even have me in your top 10 though, or whatever it was.
I didn't know how to control any of that. Oh, man. So let's talk about actually CWE for a little while, because that's a promotion I definitely see they do something right, in that I see them everywhere on the internet. You know what I mean? I see them everywhere on Facebook, everywhere on Twitter. How did you become more involved with them? Because I know you actually do quite a bit of work for those guys.
Well, living in Medicine Hat, we didn't have no wrestling coming to town. Like, we'd always have to make road trips.
Sorry, and let's shout out real quick to Danny Duggan, who's a promoter there.
Yes, yeah, Danny. I've talked to Danny quite a bit now, because we do communicate about the shows. I think it's about 5 or 6 years ago, I caught my first show here in Medicine Hat, and the only reason I knew about it was Johnny Devine was going to be on it.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, there's a name. I didn't never ever heard of CWE, and so I went, and it was over at a little hall here in town, and me and the boys went, and didn't really know what to think about it. I've seen some smaller promotions come through, and I was like, well, yeah, no thanks. It's not worth it, right? I might as well have my boys wrestle in the backyard to be more entertaining. We went over, gave them a shot, and it actually was really surprised. They actually had a couple of TNA boys on there too, Frankie Kazarian.
Okay.
Going there. So anyway, they came to town, and they only had about 50 to 60 people at the show.
Right.
And this was their first time in town, and I'm like, yeah, well, I don't think they'll be back. And I'm like, here we go, Medicine Hat screwed over again. PWA didn't come here, or CW didn't come here, so it's like just travel, right? It's too far out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So about a year and a half later, Danny was doing a tour back in Alberta, and he came to town. So before the show started, I sent him a message, and I said, you're coming to town. Let's, you don't have a local guy here, so what can I do to help? I said, even if it's just something simple as putting up a few posters for you.
Right.
So we'll jump in and do it. And he was more than happy to have someone like just go pick up the posters, and so I did that. And the next show, we seen a bit of an increase, because we knew what businesses to put the posters in. Living here for all these years, like,
right.
I know who's a wrestling fan in town, who's not. So
yeah, you know where the demographic is.
Yeah, so let's go pop a few posters there. We did that. Went over, and then next, Danny at the time was doing shows every 3 to 4 months. So they would come in again, and okay, I'll pick up your tickets for you. Send the tickets to my house, and I'll drop them off to the ticket outlets, and
right.
We did things like that, and it just started to carry on from there. And we started hosting some of the guys. They're coming through. I started connecting with some sponsors here in town. I got them businesses to give sponsorship money. That's a big help, right? Because some towns bomb, some towns don't work out, right?
Yeah, you bet.
So we gave them some names as sponsors. Then I started connecting with some media, because I know all the media personalities in town. So
right,
I'll get them on some radio shows. I got them on TV at our news broadcast at the lunch, and then the next thing you know, the crowd started to grow a little bit. Nice. And then we'd say, okay, well, you got some international guys coming through. So they would do like Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, Calgary, and hotels are always, as expensive when you're on the road.
For sure.
And the boys can afford them. So I said, well, a couple of the guys can stay here. Right. So the next thing you know, there was one guy, then there was 3 guys. And we became Hotel Soper, and Kim would be making them food and stuff, and it would be like they'd come here and rest and get them away from off the the typical like in the hotel and board, and then
some normal food.
Yeah, have some normal food and stuff like that. And then we started to have some guys come over. We'd get to meet some guys from Germany and Japan, and they would come and stay here, and then they'd spend a couple days with us. We had 3 guys from Japan and Korea that stayed with us, and it was like one of the funnest times we've ever had. Like those guys were not a word of English at the first, like they hadn't broken English, but it was great watching them interact with the family and just watching, because they came to Alberta and it was snowing and they're wearing flip flops. And they're running around in the snow in their flip flops and chasing the deer out back of my place, and it was quite interesting, And so then it just went on from there, and I tried my best to do some more promoting in town, and then Kim and I worked social media and we get it going, and then before you knew it, the crowds were quite good. And then Danny does a unique thing. He brings in like one legend. From all over. So we had guys like Beefcake coming in, Paul Orndorff coming in. So yeah, the fan in me was like, oh yeah, crap, this is cool. I get to meet Ron Simmons now, right? Before the show starts and get to talk to him a little bit. And so it was like a little added plus, right? And every one of the guys, like Paul Orndorff, Simmons, they were like total gentlemen. They were like great guys and totally not what I expected to see. Really down to earth and really willing to help all the boys.
Nice.
And then I remember sitting over one day picking up Arizona at school, and I was just scanning messages, and Danny said, "Oh, bringing in Nikita Koloff."
Oh.
And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh." Yeah, I just dropped my phone and I literally just marked out moment. It was like, this is crazy. And then I messaged Kim. I said, "Danny's bringing Koloff." I said, "It ain't going to happen. Guarantee he's going to frig up somehow. I'm not going to work." And I will be honest, Jordan, that day that he came to town, and here I am helping out with the guys. I was like like a little kid, like first day. I threw up. Like my stomach had the jitters, and I walked into the building, and he stood up, and he goes, "You must be my friend Dwayne," and because he was following me on Twitter, because I'd always post matches of him and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
Then it was like, yeah, then he got up and shook my hand. Took the kids into the ring, and he gave them a bunch of merchandise and took pictures with us all. And that guy was like, he's still to this day one of the nicest guys I've ever met in the business.
That is awesome.
So I get to help a little bit behind the scenes, help promotion, and then I also get get that little extra meeting of the guys, and get that little extra rub because you're helping them out. So it's kind of cool.
Well, that Koloff one, man, that must be a dream come true, because that must have been for you. He's so far away, right?
Oh, I never thought I'd see him in Canada, right? That's
right.
Working NWA. How often did the NWA ever come? I think they only came to Winnipeg a couple times, and then they were in Toronto a couple times. But that was never an idea of them coming up here, right?
Well, not in Stu's territory, anyways.
No, and then it was like, watching tapes, and of course, him being the most hated wrestler in North America at one point there, he was like despised, and it was cool seeing how he is behind the scenes.
Right.
And to this, like I said, to this day, he's just totally nice. Not the Russian nightmare, that's for sure. But yeah, it was like I used to even say to Kim, "This is a childhood dream." Pardon the childhood dreams come true, Shawn Michaels deal. This was a childhood dream come true for me. It's probably I've met a lot of guys over time, but this one was made my stomach. I didn't think I was going to make it. I thought I was going to hurl right in the building that night. It was freaking pathetic. I was like sweats, and then after I even told him too, man. Like I was like, oh shit, this is not good. And I was like, I was going to cry. I was like a little teenager meeting the new kids on the block. Right?
Really, hey?
Insane. But yeah,
that's what I love about you, man. Literally just unbridled passion. Like unbridled passion for wrestling, and I love that.
It was cool. I look back on it now, and I'm like, yeah, forget whatever. People laugh and stuff, but I'm like, yeah, you're not going to be here in 15 years talking to me about it, so I'm just going to enjoy that moment.
Well, right? And you know what? Fuck those guys, right? Like, I can remember when I got to meet 3 of the 4 guys from Metallica. You know what I mean? Long before I started pro wrestling, and it was huge for me because I mean, for most of my life, even to this day, I've listened to Metallica probably 60% of the time. right? Like I listened to a lot of Metallica. So when I met them, you know, I was pretty excited. Like, you know, you're trying to be cool, right? But at the same time, inside you're just like you're shitting your pants inwardly.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
I know how you felt. But then I know after that point, like I thought about it, and I'm like, I can't even remember, like everybody from the Road Warriors to Davey Boy to, you know, Brett met Brett a few times. And as a wrestling fan, those are some pretty big names. And never ever had that feeling, right? That was just, so I can imagine if I missed it. Danny was bringing Stan Hansen into Winnipeg. And I was like, shit, I'm going. This is not going to stop me. And then a winter storm happened in, I think he was in Colorado for a connecting flight, and he couldn't make it. And he didn't make it. And I was like, oh, everybody was heartbroken. Like I don't even know if I would even made it drive, because I probably would have died halfway on the road. Right? With nerves, because that one would have killed me too. I can't even imagine how the level would have been on that one.
Is that right? Eh? What's your favorite Stan Hansen match?
Him and Andre. 80, I don't know, it was early 80s, 80, 81, somewhere in there. So you can find it on YouTube. Andre worked his ass off for Hansen, and you know, from what I've been told or seen, you know, it took a lot to get Andre to wrestle. Yeah. And like that match is worth watching. Like look it up. It's a fun match, and just as Andre and like reading Hansen's book, I got Hansen's book, and I recommend that to anybody. He had a lot of respect for Andre, and sounds like it was vice versa.
Right.
And that was pretty cool. But you can't go wrong with any of Hansen's, with Kobashi, Kawada, any of those guys in All Japan at that time, early 90s. But Andre was probably one of the coolest ones.
Well, a lot of people, especially, you know, I don't want to smash on a younger generation, but they definitely don't know sort of the matches that Andre worked in Japan and stuff like that, how agile Andre the Giant really was. Like, he could really work his ass off, man.
Oh yeah, like if you could find footage of him in the 70s, like there is some on there from when he's working in Quebec.
Right.
And he had some great, and he was, you know, I'd say he's probably 150 pounds or more lighter back then, at least. And he was jumping all over the place, right? He was a flying Frenchman, so to speak, at that time for his size. And
he's probably only 300 pounds then. Yeah,
he deserves a lot of respect, because the guy could work. You know, everybody, you can't judge him on his Hulk Hogan WrestleMania 3.
No.
From that point on, right? He was nearing the end of his career at that point. But him in Japan, and he loves Japan, right? And he got to be a bad guy over there.
Right.
And he didn't have to carry up the image. You know, if he's pissed off at the fans, just bugger off. I don't want to talk to you, right? So
he can just be himself.
Yeah. But a lot of the guys over there wanted to work with him, and the guys that he liked, he worked well with. And Hansen is a prime example. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think in a situation, you definitely want Andre the Giant to like you, right? Like, you hear a lot of stories about, you know, you'd have to go sit with Andre and play cards and drink cognac until it was time to wrestle, and the guys would be half gooned, you know, climbing the ring. So even if Andre didn't just want to do whatever he wanted with you anyway, he could, because you were half pissed. Like,
yeah. Well, apparently he did it for the pain, right? That's what everybody says now that knew him well, was like he was just constantly putting them back just to numb out the pain that he had. So yeah, I can't imagine being in that thing and then trying to be in a good mood all the time. Like, you know,
chronic pain, people don't realize what chronic pain does to people. You know, like, it's when you wake up every day, even if you don't notice it, it changes you, whether you realize it or not outwardly. If you wake up every day with a sore back and it's hard to tie your shoes and, you know, function as a normal person because you're literally in pain all day, every day, that changes you, man. That's a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, so imagine your body will never stop growing. Like, that's got to be a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah. Well, we're both getting older. You know, every day is getting harder to roll out, right? I know if I'm bringing out a hot water tank now, I'm like, oh man, I remember doing this 20 years ago when it was easy bringing a hot water tank down to somebody's basement. Now it's like, man, it's a chore now. So it's.
Oh man. I was working a little while ago and I had to move a bunch of stuff, and I won't give you the whole story, but yeah, my back and neck, like my back was sore for about a week until I could get in for a massage, and my neck was sore for about 3 weeks, you know, like it's
yeah, it's catching up to us.
Yeah, man. Like it's like I can still function pretty good, but the manual labor days are over, right? Like I still fantasize about, boy, I'd sure like to work outside in the sun and do some landscaping construction, do that kind of stuff. Like, man, you can't do that work anymore. Just stop it.
Yeah, unfortunately I still do some of it. And this last summer's heat, I was working outside in this bloody heat was high torture. And here I am. I'm like, come on, winter, and everybody's like looking at me like, are you nuts? And I'm
Yeah,
like, no,
that's
give
one
me
of the
my
few
phone.
things we disagree on is actually your feelings on winter.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I'm one of the few that love it. I
Yeah.
would, I can't wait till it gets cold again.
Well, it's cold
I
now. All right. It's 20, like what, 15 degrees out. It's
I
freezing.
see you wearing a hoodie, right? I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and I'll probably be wearing that to work.
Well, I'm also down in the basement. It's cold down here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't take over the upstairs to do a podcast.
I have a few fans going back and forth there, so they're trying to keep the noise down as they walk by me.
Is that a few fans? How is the family? The boys are well.
Yeah, they're doing good. Yeah, they're up to getting school. The two older guys are working out at the provincial park.
Okay.
So they're keeping busy out there, getting a little bit of taste of real life, so to speak. And they've been up there for a couple of years, so they love it. Little girl is Arizona's. She's a character. Unfortunately, she's probably the biggest wrestling fan of the whole bunch of us now.
Is that right? Hey.
Oh, she sits in the front row at the shows and screams her bloody head off, and the wrestlers.
Well, she loves AJ Sanchez. Am I wrong about that?
Oh yeah, loves him. Right. She tells him where to go. Yeah, well, she gets in the face of every one of them and gives them a hard time. So the whole family is there. It's kind of cool because the whole family. A lot of fans have walked up and said this afterwards. Like, it's awesome watching your family. Like at the shows and the kids are getting involved with the wrestlers, and as you guys know, as a wrestler, if you're not getting a reaction, it's you wonder to yourself, am I doing anything right or wrong?
Yeah.
Our kids give you a reaction, and then they feed off of that, and then the rest of the crowd feeds off it. So it's kind of cool.
Well, and that's the other thing about kind of fans like yourself that are so involved is that you're involved, but you're not jaded by the business. You'll still react, the way you want to. Not, I won't say an appropriate way, but the way you want to at a show, right? Yeah. Where your kids are smart to the business at a pretty young age, and they'll still react at the show.
Yeah, right? It's still real, even though they know it's real. Put it that way, right? That they can be sitting at home here with one of the guys and watching the two guys fighting that night, and they're still like talking to them, and then they go to the show that night and they're like, holy crap, and they're screaming. They got the good guys and the bad guys, and no, stay away. It's hilarious watching them. So
well, and I mean because how old was Arizona when wrestlers first started coming to stay at your house? Even Brody.
Oh, Brody, we were, I think, taking him when he was in a car seat. I got pictures of St. John and Owen, like they're with Harry and Natty, and like they put Brody or Owen on a table. They had to put Owen on a table so he could even get close to him, right? Because Owen, I think, was 2. So
really,
like those boys were really young when we were bringing them to the show, making their road trips. We're out at Boston Pizza, and here we are with Owen at 2 and St. John at 4, and they're at the table with you guys, and they're like ready to fall asleep like that, right? We're
11:30 at night at the Ogden, or is it? No, sorry, the Riverbend Boston Pizza.
Yeah, Riverbend Boston Pizza. They're ready to crash, and we're like looking over at them. They're like, everybody's like, how come these 2 little kids are here, right? But they were part of the package, right? We came with us. So.
What kind of parents are they?
Well, it's memories for them. They never forgot it. And then like guys like Harry, Natty, and TJ never forgot it either, because when they came to town or Lethbridge or whatever, they were like sending us tickets, and the boys were like, this is awesome, right? So they never forgot where they came from, and they never forgot us, so to speak, and they never forgot a lot of fans along the way, because I see them from town to town. They're like, yeah, these guys, they supported us when we were small, and they returned it, which is cool.
Right. Yeah, man, that's one thing I always say about those 3 in particular is they've, even with fame, success, and some money, they're still the same people. I mean, obviously they've matured, but they're still, TJ and Harry still have a good rib. Natty still got the same funny, hilarious sense of humor. Like they're just the same people. They're just more mature and in a better place financially.
Yeah, it's true that their personalities, they stood with it. What I find it neat is like we'll go, like TJ will come to town, and where do you want to go to supper? Let's go to Humpty's.
Yeah.
It's just like you're driving a Ferrari or whatever you're driving now, and you're going to go to Humpty's. It's just, that's what we over breakfast, like that's just, he hasn't forgot. He's still the same DJ that way, right? It's
Yeah.
cool.
When he comes to town, I meet him at one of two places: Humpty's or Korean barbecue.
There you go. See? So
Yeah.
they have some things.
Yeah, and usually Dan Vandergrant's there, and poor Dan has to do all the cooking because I have no idea how to run that Korean barbecue grill.
I've never been there. I've heard good things.
Oh, well, when you go, like, it's serious. You go there with TJ and Harry, and I mean, obviously, especially Harry, they put on like an eating clinic at those places. Like it's unbelievable the amount of food those guys can put down.
I was at Montana's one time with the family and Harry, and it was like he ordered 2 or 3 meals for himself, and then by that time he was eating off everybody else's plate, so he can put it back. And I don't know how he can eat that much and be in such good shape.
Yeah.
I put that on. I'm like, yeah, no thanks.
Well, when they first signed, I mean, so I guess we're talking 2008, somewhere in there, 2006, 2008. I had them over to my house for dinner. No, this is even well before that. This is probably 2003. This is, before 2005 for sure. And my wife made this massive lasagna, like as big as a lasagna pan as we could get our hands on. And I had a slice, my wife had a slice, Natty had a slice. TJ and Harry finished off the rest of the lasagna and a 4-liter of milk. It was just like, what? I don't. It was like a contest.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So now let's talk briefly about your history of Stampede. So when you think back to the Stampede days, I'm gonna take the Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation out of the equation. So just because those are all of our answers. Do you know what I mean? Those are the goats.
They're the go-to. Yeah.
Yeah. So and they simply are the greatest, right? So in your time with Stampede, other than those 2 teams, kind of who are your favorite? Kind of who are your favorite singles wrestlers? Who are your favorite tag teams from, say, that really what we'll call for us the prime era, 80 to 86.
Gamma was my all-time favorite junior heavyweight in time era. I thought he was amazing, and the heat he got was crazy. But he could work. He could work with anybody. And he worked. They threw all the young guys at him: the Owens, the Ligers, the Benoits. They all went and worked with him at one point or another.
Well, I remember being jealous when I broke in because all the Pollocks and stuff, the baby faces get to work with Gamma, and I never got to work with Gamma.
Yeah, and I'm sure in your idea that would have been a thrill, just getting across the ring from him. Getting a fireball from him probably would not be a thrill. But
I did get fireballed, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I was going to Vegas, and they needed a reason to put me out for a couple of weeks. So yeah, I got fireballed, and he just said, like, once you get into the camel clutch, do not inhale. And so, you feel the heat, and then you take that first breath, and you just smell burnt hair because I have a mustache, right? So, but it was cool, people like, you got to, what'd you do Friday night? Well, we went to the movies. What'd you do? I got fireballed by the Great Gamma, like that.
Awesome.
It was cool, man.
Yeah. Other than Gamma would have been right up there. Bad News is my favorite single heavyweight.
Right. He was a beast, man.
Yeah, he was. And I think politics aside, because I've heard stories here and there, and just as a talent, I enjoyed him. Like he was just enjoyable to watch and believable. Like I wouldn't want to piss him off. And
no, man, there was a time when I was a little kid, I was scared of Bad News and I was scared of the Stomper, like legit. Afraid of those guys.
The Stomper, I only seen him live a couple times,
right?
And I wasn't nearly infatuated is the best way to put it with him. Right. I've watched his show matches outside of Stampede and stuff. The guy was a hell of a talent.
Yeah.
I don't think he came to Messinette that often, right? So that was a lot of the guys, the bigger names. Sometimes just like these spot shows were like, they were let's send Cuban and Jerry and Randy Thatcher and guys like that. Right? So we missed out on a few of the big names.
Okay.
So it was okay. Viacom Express.
Oh yeah.
They were perhaps one of my favorite tag teams of any promotion, any era. What they did with Owen and Bazarev is incredible. Like those guys they could tear the house down, and they did, and they were in like places like Tabor and doing 35-minute matches, and no reason to do a 35-minute. Yeah. So they were great. And personal favorite is the Cuban Commandos. Those two just kill me. I love watching those two in action. So yeah, those are in a nutshell. That's probably my favorite. Like you said, keep the Bulldogs and Heart Foundation out of it. Those were the guys who I would lean towards.
Right. And
again,
I don't think anyone can argue with that list, right? Like you could, I would put, like Dr. D was probably my favorite, heel from Stampede. He just cut the best promos. And, for me, Ron Starr was somebody that I've, kind of ripped off his style a bit, to be quite honest with you. I was a big kind of, between Dr. D, Ron Starr. That was a lot of Duke Durango right there.
Couldn't go wrong with either one of those guys, for sure.
No, man. And I can remember this is a story. I don't know if I've actually told too many people this. So, there might be another 50 people that hear this story now. But I was trying out, I think I was in maybe 5th grade. I went to a new school, trying to fit in. And I joined the choir because my mom always sang and played guitar. So I joined the school choir. And there was tryouts for the Calgary Boys Choir. And to this day, I will bet my life that I seen Dr. D. David Schultz there with his kid trying out for the Calgary Boys Choir. Yeah. And just to be clear, I was a shitty singer. I didn't make it. No, I was the shits. I still am. Yeah. But yeah. So David Schultz for me was probably my favorite heel of all time.
I think for Ron Starr, you say he's kind of worked his style. I can't remember who we were talking to, but a couple of fans we were blabbing back and forth, and that was brought up as we were comparing modern era Stampede versus the 80s Stampede and who was who.
Right. Okay.
Throw it out there, and you were lumped in with Ron Starr, so it was cool. And I think I might have told you that once upon a time, and you were like,
I'll take that as a huge compliment, man. To even have my name mentioned in the same breath as Ron Starr, I'll take that.
Yeah, he was definitely a talent and underappreciated. I don't think he got the appreciation that he did, like, because he worked worldwide, right?
Well, that's I say you watch his stuff outside of Stampede, man. That guy could work. Like he was good. Like that, and that's the thing is a lot of times because the internet wasn't a thing then. People don't realize. Like I seen a thing. Somebody sent me a link of a thing that said I had I don't know, like less than 200 matches. And Neil was, you had a pretty good record in these 200 matches you had. It's like, bro, I had like 1,800 matches. Like, but the internet wasn't a thing when we started. Nobody could keep track of all that when we were working, 2 shows a night for 68 shots in 72 days.
You didn't have a little diary writing them down?
I didn't, man. I really didn't. And I was talking to my wife probably within the last few months and saying, I kind of wish I would have documented that stuff better because I only remember certain things. Like there's a lot of it that just washes into one day after the next.
Yeah.
So it's, I remember working programs with guys, but I don't remember the matches. It's disappointing.
I think the first time I saw you was here in the Hats. I might be wrong with the date, but I think it was 99.
And no, you're probably right.
At the Cypress Center, you and Pollock had a match.
Ooh.
And you guys were awesome to watch together.
Thank you.
And then there was a crazy, I think it was like a 9 or 10, or it must be a triple tag or something. Bruce was in it, and Wavell Starr, and
I remember this because I remember that show actually. Yeah, it was at least an 8-man, or it was at least an 8-man tag at the end. Yeah,
Tiger Khan, Ruffy. There's a bunch of you guys were all in this. Of course, it was almost like the build all the singles matches, and then all of a sudden you had the big burn off at the end of the show, right? You had the triple tag.
Well, that's what we always did because sometimes we didn't travel with enough guys. So you'd have like an 8-man roster. So everybody would wrestle early, and then the 4th match would have a schmoz and set up the the battle royal or the 10-man tag main event kind of thing, 8-man tag main event.
It was fun. I guess it's funny because I got to know a few of you guys afterwards, but I at that point didn't know you guys on Hole in the Ground, right?
Right.
But we had some decent crowds in Medicine at that point. You guys are doing TV tapings, and it was.
So I remember that. I specifically remember that show because at that time, I think I could be full of shit, but I think Pollock was living with me then. And Christmas Day, we got up and that show aired Christmas Day. And it was like the Pollock and Geordie hour, because the first half of the show there was a match, and I think it was us to the half hour of the show, and then the last half hour of the show was that big 8-man tag. So I remember like we just thought the sun was shining right out our ass that we were on for the whole hour on Christmas Day, you know.
That would have been the show, yeah, because it was winter when I remember going standing outside in line, and I hadn't done that in a long time, because that was one of the first shows since the 80s here in Medicine Hat, right?
Okay.
And so that was probably 10 or 11 years since we had a show in the Hat, and I think the last one was Larry Cameron was here in town, so that was 89 for sure.
Holy cow.
So that was the first time that I knew of a wrestling show. Well, other than WWE, they were there a couple times, but they bombed in Medicine Hat for some reason. They only bring in like 1,500 people.
Really?
And yeah, the last time they came through here, I think they had 800 sold. And
are you serious?
I am serious. And then they had another show, and then they were like, yeah, no, we're not coming now because of they said travel differences, but it was because no tickets sold. It sucked.
I can't even get my head around that, because I think.
Oh yeah, no, the arena was like, we were in the front row, and we were like looking around, and we're like, this looks like we're at a Stampede show. Like, not trying to be down.
I could be wrong, but I think that show you're talking about, they drew 750.
Yeah, like we had CM Punk and the Hart Dynasty were here. Jericho was here, and they couldn't draw nobody. So that's crazy. And the Cypress Center used to be packed.
Geez, next time WWE's coming to Medicine Hat, I'm going to drive down there.
Yeah, it's not hard to get a ticket.
Plus, then I get to see you guys.
I remember old Stampede 1800, like at the Cypress Center, like when like the sell it as 1950, I believe it is, but they were doing close to 1800 when the Bulldogs came back from the WF.
Right.
So yeah, when Morocco was here, and like that place was packed, and then the atmosphere was insane. So, but yeah, the WWE can do nothing.
Right. I've been holding on to this question since almost the beginning. Did you notice a difference in booking? Because you'd watch the show, obviously, you'd watch Stampede every Saturday on television. Did you notice a difference between any of the booking that you've seen on television and any of the booking that you would see when they came through Medicine Hat?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we the heels won more in town.
Right.
I think that was to get them to come back next go around, right?
Right.
What's going to piss you off more than to have Maka Singh squash somebody when you're hoping he'd win.
Yeah, for sure.
But booking wise, veterans like Leo Burke and guys like that got more time. Of course, it was TV, right? Of course, TV cut. Who knows how many minutes off on TV tape?
Oh man, Pollock and I went, I think 25 minutes, and at the Pavilion in the first show, and I think they aired about 6.
Yeah, see that. So that tells you right there. And then when you guys came, like late '90s, I saw you guys. You had more interaction with the fans than you did actually at the like the Calgary shows.
Right.
I think because you had less crew to work with, like you had mentioned, so you're trying to waste time, right? Because I remember like Divine coming out in the audience and sitting down and having a beer with some of the fans, right? And just sitting there and finishing the whole beer, and the rest like 1, 2, and then you guys just stop, no, and then back 1, 2, no, and then he's back in again. So it was like, oh my God, there's more outside stuff going on here than.
Right,
so,
I see what you're saying.
Run the clock, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's sometimes you were killing time waiting for guys to get to the show. Like, people don't realize that, a lot of guys had jobs, and so show would start at 7:30. There'd be 6 guys in a locker room. You'd be like, oh shit, okay. I guess we're doing who's main eventing. Well, I was supposed to be the main event, but looks like I'm going out first. I guess I'll see you guys after.
Yeah, change things up. But then also, like I also saw they would give more like going to Tabor, like the old Stampede. When you went to Tabor with current Bow Island, each town had kind of a favorite.
Right.
Like Kenny Johnson was over big here. Of course, this is where he was from.
Okay.
So, that would play a big effect onto his part of the show,
Right.
and if you won or not. And, the old, nowadays you see the hometown guy loses a lot. Right, but back then it was like this guy has some leverage, so Jeff Wheeler would get the big win over Gamma. Somehow he'd get the win over Gamma, and then you wouldn't see that in Calgary too often. That would
Right.
be, they kept the top guys or the top guys in Calgary. So,
Well, and the thing is there was always a Hart as the top guy at Stampede, which made it, always, so you always had a top guy from Calgary no matter what.
yeah.
Right. So, all right, now let's fast forward to the new era. 98, 99, 2000, you start catching win to Stampede Wrestling. What was your first show was that one at the Cypress Center there right before Christmas. When did you start kind of running the message boards and websites and shit like that? Well, how fast did you get involved with that?
2003, I believe. I started watching you guys' Nate channel and stuff, and then I was like, saw the Stampede Wrestling website advertised on one of the shows, right?
Okay.
And then I popped on there, and then I was like, okay, no, a message board. And of course, I'm like, I was part of a couple other message boards down in the States, so gave it a shot and checked it out, and it was kind of neat. And then just once again, there was the same 80 or 90 of us on there that was kept it alive, right? The same group of fans. And then actually, I think I did I started doing your own message boards on all your websites first.
Okay.
Kind of like it was like, you remember your Durango website, and then
that was a fun message board because there was no dicks. Like everybody could speak freely and nobody was swearing at each other.
It was it was a good group of people overall, right? And
that was fun.
Said a lot. There was a lot of people like, hey, we don't have to worry about the shit that goes on in other ones.
Yeah, there were some dicks on that Stampede board.
And then Kurt approached me actually, or something happened, and I started doing the PWA board.
Okay.
Or I created a PWA board. That's what I did. I created a PWA message board similar to yours and stuff, and then it was kind of cool. Did a little bit of that, and then Rachel was, I think she was helping out with the Stampede board, and then she messaged to me and said that you want to start helping out with this one. So I jumped on board the Stampede one, and then I was actually helping Ross. I was doing some writing. I was like writing stories, like kind of a weekly recap of the shows, and then kind of like a Pro Wrestling Illustrated type of thing where you'd like build up. Duke Durango's challenging, just Bob Brown in Kansas right now to come out of retirement, and just kind of a bunch of kayfabe crap.
Yeah, you
make it interesting, right? It's kind of just to build up some stories and stuff. And so then it just went on from there, and that's just so roughly 2004 to about 2006, 2007.
Is that right, eh? And so all of that has led to, geez, what are we talking about? An 18-year relationship between me and your family?
Yeah, it's crazy how it's and it's been good. Like, you didn't know us from a hole in the ground, and you invited us into your home when we came from Calgary one time. Kim and I talk about that every once in a while. We were coming down the town, and I had started doing your website, and you said, you don't need a hotel, come to our place. And I'm like, no, you don't know, we have a whole horde of people. And you were like, oh, it doesn't matter, bring all the kids, all the better, right? So we showed up. At that time we only had 2 kids, but it was 4 of us. And then Grizz was there as well. So Grizz was staying at your house that night.
Oh, is that right? Jeez, okay.
Yeah, so so we all sat around, you ordered us pizza and stuff like that. And I was nervous as hell because I'm like, oh man, my boy's gonna break something, right? They're running around, and I'm like, don't break windy stuff over here. And you're like, oh, don't worry. And then it just carried on from there. And then, of course, Owen was going back and forth to Calgary. Like, he's had a lot of hospital issues.
Right.
And you became kind of a hero of his that way, because you always took the time out to, after you could have been working that day, and you're like chugging across to Calgary to get to the hospital just to see, out in the parking lot to see Owen, and we went out to supper, and it made the whole trip. We had like a 10, 12-hour day already that day at the hospital, and we're both dog tired, but Owen's gleam on his face was like just glowing, right? You were such a,
I forgot about that stuff, actually.
Oh man, no, we didn't forget about it. It still goes on. And then I remember Arizona, 6 months old in the hospital. the Children's Hospital, and I'm there all alone, and it was like one of the most horrible moments of my life, and you were there. Like you're like a snowstorm going on outside, and you're chugging over. So it's those memories mean more to me now than the relationship that we had in the wrestling part.
For
Like,
sure.
it's funny how wrestling brought it to us. Like you stood up, and then same thing going for Special Olympics, and you and Wendy being at the events. Like you guys are like family. So it's crazy how it worked out.
Well, obviously you can see it means a lot to me too. I'm softer than baby shit. People think Duke Durango's hard as fuck. I'm not. No, man, and that's one of the things I'm proudest of in wrestling is, belts are cool and winning matches is cool, but the relationships that I've been able to develop with people like yourself and Roy and Alex and the rest of the nation and people like Rachel. That Jesus, she's a legend to all of us, right? Those relationships mean the world to me, man. And on that note, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to let you get out of here. Dwayne, thank you so much for being on here. Is there anything you want to plug? Do you want to plug CWE or Nikita Koloff?
Well, you can check out CWE on Facebook, but one thing, I don't care who you follow, just go and support indie wrestling, whatever town, Edmonton, Calgary, Medicine Hat, Lethbridge. There's promotions all over. Just get out and support them, because a lot of talent out there, and just they need support. And that's I think that's the best thing to plug right now, is just check out your local indie scene.
That's perfect, man. Dwayne Soper, everybody, thank you so much for coming on, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, bud.
You're welcome.
Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth.